Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Confusianity podcast, which is actually an excerpt from my buddy Tommy Danger's podcast. I was actually his first and only guest to date, but I'm sure he'll have plenty more excellent episodes when he gets around to it. We discussed several juicy topics over the course of about 3 hours, but perhaps most importantly, we each shared the stories of our departures from religion, and that religion, of course, being everybody's favorite, Christianity. In this inaugural episode, you'll often hear us sharing some laughs, but I don't want to mitigate how absolutely serious of a matter this actually was for us. It is no small feat to leave religion, which is often why religious people never actually make that leap of NONfaith, as even though things don't feel quite right, we still stick with what we were raised with, because it's our identity. It's our upbringing, our heritage, our family, our social network, our mindset, our values. Hell, it is our eternal destiny after we die. It is, frankly, everything. And how do you leave everything behind, or why would you want to? Well, because for some of us, the truth is shouting so loud in our face, we cannot ignore it any longer. We cannot go on living what feels like a lie. And even though we don't have any clue what it's like to not be Christian, we deem the new abyss worthy of exploring. And whether diving in head first or just dipping our toes in to feel it out, one way or another, we choose this other path. And now, without further ado, here is our story. Two preacher's kids leave the church.
Let's talk about, you want to get into deconversion?
Okay.
Yeah. Confusianity.
Yeah, we can come back to some dating stuff, but we didn't talk about it.
So I think I really enjoy our friendship because ever since we met and we got to know each other, we've gone through things around the same time, and also like in terms of dating, relationships, women, and in terms of also religion. And we're also both PKs. We're both pastor kids. And we bonded over that, and it was you. It's funny that I say this. Thank God I met you. Thank the universe. Or think whatever that I met you, because I was at the tipping point. I was just before the tipping point, but I needed you to invite me to that group, where I met Susie. But seriously, it's just. I just couldn't. It's funny how looking back, and I still do this every now and then, that I couldn't get there by myself. I just needed to be in a diner on the west side somewhere with you, with other people there, just talking about their deconversion story. And all people, some people were still in it. I remember that one dude, the young guy, who was still basically in a cult, and other people were just like, and I'm just like, man. My family, the churches I've been, we're all pretty weak. Everyone had it so bad. Everyone basically were like Scientologists. Everyone was like...
There's a whole spectrum.
It's crazy how fundamental and how cultish they like a lot of those stories were. Like basically Amish. I'm just like, I was in a very mainstream, secular, pagan version of Christianity, even though I'd like to think that it was conservative, or my dad likes to think it's conservative. But it's just like, I just needed to hear people like that. It's like, holy shit, I don't need to do this anymore. I mean, I was barely hanging out to church anyways, but I was just like, this is great. This literally changed my life, you know? But walk me through, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but walk me through your own story of faith and walking away from it.
Yeah, well... so like you said, I'm a preacher's kid as well. And so from day one, I was raised, with the Bible, and, plus I'm Indian. So I won the spelling bees as a kid because all the other kids are in school with whatever, and we're reading about Melchizedek and Jehoshaphat and all of these, Abimelech. So I had to read and spell all these words in the Bible, and then, so I got to be really good at spelling.
Nebuchadnezzar, which is in the Bible and in the Matrix.
Yeah. He's in the Matrix?
Nebuchadnezzar is the name of the ship.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. When I saw the movie, I was like, what? I know that.
I know him. Like Elf.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was raised in it, and like I want to say this for my sister and me, similar stories, but for us, because we were the only Indian family, we were the only Indian kids in the military. Like everyone was white, black, Hispanic.
Yeah.
There were no Indian families in the military. I'm talking about in the 80s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there weren't even a lot of Indians in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, relatively. Not like today, probably a lot more. But in the military specifically, barely any Indians at all. So, and we had to move around every 3 years. So, it was just so much adjustment. It was so much, it's not healthy for kids. But kids need like a stable environment. They need like a healthy, happy home life. You know, parents who are present, who care, friends and community.
I definitely can relate. I moved around a lot as a kid as well,
Yeah.
and you had both. They say that whenever you meet someone as a kid, you just moved around every so often. You're either in the military, you're in the ministry, you're the missionary, one of those two things, you know?
Yeah.
So you had both.
Yeah, so we had this element of the racial element where, you know, as being the only brown person, we had this religious element where I would often be around regular, secular people, but I'm like supposed to be super Christian. And then you've got this military aspect of it too, where sometimes I would go to civilian schools and they all know each other. They grew up together and it's still to this day, I feel this weird emotional,
Absolutely.
like I went to a wedding yesterday and the maid of honor was talking in her speech about the bride, like, we've known each other since we were 8 years old and we were best friends. And I listened to it and I'm jealous because I'm like, wow, I wish I could have had that. Like, there's no way it was possible for me to ever have something like that. And we didn't even have Facebook. There was no internet back then. Like, if you met a kid and you were good friends with him and you were 8 and it's like 3rd grade, you moved to Germany from Maryland, like, you're not, that's it. It's over. At best, you could write a couple letters and, you know, snail mail, and that's it though. So I get jealous of the same thing happened at the wedding I went to 2 weeks ago, my cousin's wedding. The guy, white guy, grew up with his best friend forever. They were college roommates. They like he's the best man at his wedding. And gave this great speech, and everybody's like, oh wow, like what an awesome friendship, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that was never a possibility for me. You know? So I sit there and my brain is processing what I'm hearing. And on the one hand, I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful thing. I'm like happy for them, and I'm sad, but I'm also kind of depressed because I'm like, wow, I don't have that. And
do you think because of all those elements that you mentioned of your upbringing, because you're a unique dude. I'm drawn to you because I like to think I'm unique too. I try to figure things out, try to ask the hard questions, try to apply it in my life. Is that, you know, nature versus nurture? Did that really embed in you the sense of like individualism, sense of like, okay, I have to figure this thing out on my own because I can't rely on, you know, other people. I can't rely on situations. Situations change all the time. Right. You're going to I've been through that. As I'm listening to you, I haven't thought about this in a long time. When I was 9 years old, living in San Francisco, it was a good setup. We were there for a good 3 years, and that was a good long run for my family. And you know, my mom told me, like, she sat me down. She's like, "We're moving to Korea." I'm like, what the fuck is Korea? I came to the U.S. when I was 4, and by that time, I just got out of ESL, you know, the year before in 3rd grade or something, so I was super happy about that. I didn't know there was, like, I thought no more reading, you know? Then I realized there's, like, I had to go back into the regular class, there's different reading levels, and there's a whole structure system there, and I was, like, in the lowest reading level there. I was like, God.
You mean in Korea?
No, in the U.S.
Oh.
In the U.S., 3rd grade, San Francisco, when the ESL teacher told me, he's like, "Oh, Tom, you're done with ESL. You graduated. You can go back to class and join the rest of the class." I'm like, "Yes!" So
and then you got uprooted.
and then I got into the regular class reading. This is so good. I'm with everyone else in the class. Oh, I'm on the lowest reading level here. Okay, whatever. I'm still happy to be here. And then like literally after that school year is done, after summer in the fall, my mom's like, "We're moving to Korea." I'm just like, God damn it.
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
I couldn't have that adult thought of being really, really frustrated or depressed by the situation, but because of that difficulty, I was becoming an adult. I was becoming a man because it's
this is what happens,
because I'm not a kid anymore. They forced me to, like, and I just, like, I had to go through the whole, like, the reverse cultural shock of going back to Korea. Everyone looks like me, but it's just Mars. It's just so weird.
Yeah.
And it stayed with me, and I'm sure it stayed with you. And you've been through that multiple times as a kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the reason why I'm discussing all these things instead of dealing directly with the religion is that this ties exactly into what I'm saying, is because as a kid, I had to rely on something. Something needed to be real and strong, and it's like some of it is like relying on myself. That's one part of it. But I think I had a special bond with my family, especially my mom and sister. So that was one consistent thread. No matter where we went, I was with my mom and my sister. So we were always going to be supporting each other and helping each other get through it. So that was closeness there. And my dad was there too, but I thought it was fine with my dad. I didn't realize until I was an adult, I really don't have that much of a relationship with him. But that's another topic. I'm not going to get into that. But he was there. I'm just, for the purposes of the podcast, I don't want to make it sound like I was a single parent. My dad was there. But the point is, I had to, as we moved and adapted, and when you're 5 years old, and 7 years old, and 9 years old, and 12 years old, like, you're not equipped with the tools of an adult mind to process and start.
Let alone vocalizing.
Yeah, you're just, fuck, like, I gotta move to this place to start all over again, and like I just, so relying on myself and my family and my religion, like God, these things are the only things that could be real and sustainable as everything else around me was changing. And I guess you could say military culture, because that was a thread. As long as I was in the military, that would be that consistency no matter where I went. So, but focusing on religion specifically, and as I got older, the other thing is, like, I couldn't even rely on like Indian pride or whatever, because I had no Indian community. That's why it was just my mom and sister and me. But like not until my teens did some of my cousins from India finally come to America, but they were like very Indian. I didn't really connect with them, So, but what I'm saying is, this thread of religion had to be important. Like, God had to be real to me and powerful in my life, because I needed that desperately to cope with everything I was going through in life. So that thread continued into high school and into college. In college, you kind of go out on your own, and you go to InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, you go to all Campus Crusade, and you decide, is religion going to be real for you, or is it something that, because you're choosing it for yourself at that point. It's not your parents putting it on you. I mean, somewhat you're still under the pressure of that, but you're kind of out on your own, and you can choose to not go to church or not. I chose to go deeper and deeper into it because I felt like I was so used to it, and that was part of my identity, and I needed it. So, fast forwarding kind of through college, and then San Francisco, I was there for 2 years, and then which was a huge struggle. But San Francisco is a good example too, and New York. So in New York, I ended up at Redeemer Presbyterian, and it was mostly all whites and Koreans. So
whites and Koreans.
We're all there because we believe in the same thing, right? And yet, why do I feel so ostracized? Why do I know so many Koreans and white people? And for my first several years at church, at Redeemer, I never dated a single person from church. Like the first Korean girl I dated like in a relationship was a Korean girl who I met at my job at RGA. Like completely unrelated to church. And I was like, how can that, you know, I did one girl from my small group who was half white, half Japanese. And, you know, so there was that. But other than that, all of my friends, my white guy friends, like they all married somebody Korean or white, and like they all coupled and married off and left me behind. So fast forwarding to when I turned 30, faith and religion, and God, the belief, it had to be the only reason I was there. I wasn't in it for the social benefits, right? Because these people don't want to date me, they don't want to marry me. Like I'm the outsider, different brown guy. I'm the creative artsy guy, where everybody there was like corporate finance and business and doctors and lawyers, and like they're not looking for the, you know, I'm just like I'm a black sheep. I'm an oddball. Yeah, I don't belong in that environment. At the same time, throughout my 20s, I'm not going and dating non-Christian. I'm not going and being unequally yoked with non-Christians who are creative, who are funny, who are interesting, who are well-traveled, who are in, you know. I'm not, because they're not Christian, right? So you see how. You see where I'm going with this, right?
Is this the thread that's out there that's just sticking out and you started pulling on it and it's just unraveling? Is this how it began? That those few things you said, you're going to a church that's like mostly whites and Koreans, not too many people of your skin tone, and they're kind of putting up a very a slight barrier to you, and especially in terms of dating. So I'm sure that you're hanging out with people at church, you're doing cool things together, fun things together. Granted, there are some cool fun things. It's your tribe basically,
right? And
you see a girl, you get to know her, you think she's cute, you ask her out, but you just get the slight rejection or non-response, and that happens over and over and over again over several years, and then it comes to realize this whole church thing is bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of that, but I would phrase it like this. There are many layers, right, in our society. There's these factors, like there's racism in America. There's sexism, there's this religion, God factor. There's like all these different things. So if you're Korean in an all-Korean church, you can just throw the racism card out the window, because race is not even an issue for you anymore, because you're all the same race there, So you only have to deal with financial career success. Like I'm talking about how people evaluate each other for life partners and dating, like, physical attraction, height, how much money you make, like race. But that race factor was there for me in the Christian environment, right? So it wasn't enough. The only true deep bond that I have with the people there is supposed to be, in theory, God and the Bible and Jesus, right? Like there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for we're all one in Christ Jesus.
Wow,
Galatians,
good.
And that verse always was like, I would cling to that. And I actually brought it up in an open, like a men's Q&A thing with Tim Keller at the Redeemer offices, and I said, on my card I wrote it out, I was like, Galatians, blah, blah, blah. And like, but how can it be, or what am I supposed to do about the fact that I feel racially ostracized in a congregation full of whites and Koreans, and they don't want to date me or whatever, and like, what am I supposed to be like? I don't want to sound like a whining, crying bitch, like y'all need to date me just because, and I don't want like some pity or like they'll date me because like, oh, I guess they feel guilty, they should date me. I don't. That's bullshit. All of that is like not healthy or awesome or happy. But this is leading to like, okay, I'm 30, and then I started to question all these things, and I went out to Vancouver and I hung out with my old Bible study leader from college, who had now, when I caught up with him in Vancouver, we're going camping, he tells me like he's walked away from the faith. So then I'm talking with him, he's saying all these things that make sense, and like it's kind of clicking in my head, like you talked about me with you. Like for me, that was my moment where I was like,
how long ago was that?
That was right when I just turned 30.
Yeah.
So I turned 30 in March. I took that trip to Vancouver
Yep.
in I think September.
Yeah.
And I was like having these epiphanies and thoughts about happiness and life and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I come back and I share it with my Bible study group, some of my thoughts.
Oh, here we go.
They shat all over it. I heard things like this one girl was saying like, well, you know, life isn't about happiness. Like, it's not about your life and what you want. It's about glorifying God and what God wants and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, easy for you to say when you're like at the top of the food chain as a white female, like in New York, and you've got your guy and you're going to get married and have kids. That's easy for you to say. You know, whereas for me, like, you've got your happiness and you've got your God thing. All I have is the God thing, which is starting to feel emptier and emptier and emptier as I get left behind by all my friends getting married, Christian friends getting married, disappearing. What happened to us being Christian brothers and sisters? Like, so going back to the best friend thing, like my best friend in New York for 5 years, we were like this. And we did everything together. We talked every day. I am like...
What was this?
I don't know if you ever met my friend Dan.
Dan, okay, go ahead.
So we were absolute besties, right? And I used to say, I think probably I said it out loud to him. I don't know if I ever said that, but I've said it out loud before where I was like, if he were a female, I would want to marry him. Like he's like my soulmate. Like I love this guy to death, right?
And that's the thing, just quick segue. That's the thing with buddies is that, you know, I forgot if there was a poet or something, I don't know. Like you can find a bro who's your soulmate closer than any romantic partner you can have with a female. Like it's just
maybe because sometimes I said, God, I wish I could be gay.
That's exactly. In some ways, I'm like,
I'm just like, but I'm
I
not.
saw two gay dudes working out in my gym. I'm just like, that's cool, man. They're swole, working out, but they're like, hey, baby, you got. Oh man, they're taking care of each other. I'm just like, I'm a little jealous. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So, long story short with him is, we're nothing now.
Yeah.
He got married, and I would text him, hey, let's hang out. He'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I got busy. Let me check with Ashley, blah, blah, blah. And I would ping him and be like, hey, we haven't hung out in like 2 months. Like, let's go grab a drink or something. He's like, yeah, okay, well, I got this thing. And I'm like, a relationship is a two-way street.
Yeah.
You can't have one party that's always inquiring and then like they get the crumbs of like, oh, hey, she canceled. You got like 15 minutes to come hang out with? I'm like, I'm not gonna. I have enough dignity, and you should have enough dignity, and any person should have enough dignity and pride to not settle for crumbs in a relationship, whether it's a romantic thing or a friendship thing. Yeah. Like every person, it's a mutual. Yeah. So I saw where this was going. Yeah. And he and many of my Christian guy friends, they just went off and had married life. And I became very disillusioned about marriage because when I started going to wedding after wedding after wedding, what I realized was this is the demarcation of the end of this friendship. And a perfect example is two very good friends of mine. My friend Dennis, who was in my small group, and my friend Susanna. She's Korean, white guy, typical combo. There's so many of that. They met at my Super Bowl party at my apartment, and then they were both kind of interested, and they went through me and they asked like what the other situation was, and I kind of helped facilitate it. A year later, they get married, or whatever it was, and you know, after the wedding, I never saw them again. Yeah. Like, and I went to their apartment once, like 9 months or a year later or something, about a year later, to give them this gift that I made them. Like I did this art piece. So that was like their wedding gift, and I went and I gave it to them. I walk into their apartment, and she's like, gets up off the couch, pregnant. And I'm like, I didn't even know she was pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. And there was just something about it. I know she's not really involved with social media that much, so it's like this stuff like that happens. But like, you know, I gave him the gift and I left, and I just felt like closure of that. Like whatever I thought it was over, like that was just like, I'm no longer a part of their life, and they're no longer a part of my life. Yeah. So the weird thing is like I've actually had other friends who are non-Christian, who were married couples, and I would hang out with them together, or I would hang out with my guy friend or girl of the group, of the pair, and we would still maintain that friendship. I would still hang out with them. Yeah. But with the Christian, I don't know, I think it's something about this whole like two become one thing they push, and Jesus in the middle of it, the glue and all that. Like they just forsaking all others, which means including forsaking your single friends.
Something in that grape juice at the communion.
Yeah. So so all of this, like I'm 30, still single, and truth be told, I was still a virgin at that point. Yeah. So, which is insane when I tell that to people, right? Yeah. Because who's a 30-year-old virgin anymore, right? But I was, again, when I talked about how my faith was real, like I studied the Bible, I knew it well, I knew heard all the sermons, like I prayed and did all that stuff, and I'm like, you're not supposed to have sex before marriage. So I was just doing what you're supposed to do as a Christian. And then, so I told you I turned 30 in March, and then I told you I had this Vancouver experience with my Bible study later in September. I'm hanging out with this Japanese girl, and I'm already, like I told you, I came back and I shared with my group, and I'm like, this is bullshit. Like I shared with them my happiness and my joy, and they shit all over it. And then I'm like hanging out with this Japanese girl, of course Japanese, completely non-religious, whatever. And we're hanging out. Her English is not that great. I want to learn Japanese, so we're like, she's kind of helping me with my Japanese. I'm helping her with English. We're like hanging out. I think it was like December, and we have sex. I lose my virginity. Yeah. So.
Bada bing.
Yeah. So that finally happens, and it was educational experience. It was like, okay, wow, so this is what sex is.
Oh,
okay?
That's interesting.
All right. So the thing is, the timing of it was like she actually had to go back to Japan, like the next week. So right after New Year's, like she left the country. So, so then I'm back on my own. I'm single, but it's kind of like, okay, my eyes have been opened. Yeah. And what my experience was with sex was, we put it on a pedestal in this Christian thing, right? Yeah. So it's like, and I literally heard Tim Keller preach sermons on this, where the closest you can get to experiencing God in this life is sex within marriage with your wife or husband. Like, I've heard that spoken on the pulpit. Yeah. And I'm like, well, how the fuck does that make a single person feel who's never going to get married and have sex? Yes. They're missing out on the most important way or the most significant, amazing way of experiencing God, right? It's bullshit.
That's actually bullshit. I have to chime in here. So that's actually one of the things one of the last church I went to in LA. Granted, there's some cool people there as far as Christians are concerned, but still, like I really, like you, I really wanted to be involved. I wanted to be a leader. I want to do cool things in church and all that, and help people. And also, so I joined the leadership class or whatever they had. And one of the things that we're going through at the end of it, you just write a little paper about what you've learned so far. So I wrote, my paper was, to put it crudely, church doesn't give a shit about single people. You either...
Well, it's funneling them into getting married and having more Christian babies to like, it's just propagating. Honestly,
it's evangelizing.
It's like a cult.
It's evangelism by birth.
You want to spread the cult.
It's growth by birth. Yeah. But also to segue, and we can go more deep into like the whole deconversion process. But for me, as I'm listening to you, I'm 110% with you and all that. But I always think, especially now that I'm stepped away from it, and especially for me in the last 5 years, having gone through so much. The more and more I look back in my time within the Christian faith throughout my 20s into basically age 30, I appreciate everything I've gone through, because whether it was positive things or negative things from within the church, within the faith, I've learned everything that I could about humanity, about human nature, about even the little things, like you've said, Koreans are motherfucking racist. We are the, and I joke around this. I was joking around this 2 nights ago, hanging out with people. I was like the only Korean there. And I'm just like, my usual shtick is that like Koreans, we are racist. Whenever you hear a Korean say, I'm not racist, you just walk the fuck away, or just throw soju in their face. Because I've had Bible studies, I've had talks with other Koreans, and we're all Korean American. You know, some are even more American than me.
When you say Koreans are racist, do you mean like Korean Americans are more racist than Koreans, or
they're all something about our heritage and culture. We're such a small country, but we're so driven and industrialized, modernized. But even Korean Americans, and it's just in our blood. It's just in our DNA. When I'm going to this church back in LA, it's the same church I just talked about, and we're like, there's a men's group, or there's a Bible study, there's community meeting, whatever, and it's cool. But I distinctly remember this dude, this married dude, he's a cool dude. But he's just him and his wife, they've had best of intentions. They try to go to like a very ethnically mixed, ethnically well proportioned church, and because that's what they're both Korean American. They're both very Americanized, but they just didn't feel it. They
went into a multi-ethnic place, and they ended up.
There's something about just cultures that's just like there's a film. There's something to divide.
So they ended up going and finding a Korean church?
That's how they got to that church, was this, mostly a Korean, like pretty much 99%. There's not many non-Korean people going to that church.
And that's where you met them.
That's where I met them, and I'm just like, yeah, that is kind of true. Something about, even though like I've gone to Korean churches in the U.S. where everything's in Korean, and that feels good too. But I think in English, so I didn't do well in that environment. So, but I completely 100% agreed with their sentiment. Something about seeing people like not even Chinese or Japanese. It's like holy shit, you're fucking Korean. You look fucking Korean. There's something about that we look alike and we think alike, and it's just like, that's why it's hard, and I think like Redeemer. I think Koreans and whites. Hell, one of my sisters married a white guy. So it's just like...
Well, the way I always used to phrase it is, and this is, again, you can say this is a racist statement, or I'm literally just putting the label on exactly what I observe. This is objectively. Koreans will either stick with Korean or they'll upgrade to white. That's basically
it's really, really funny. I think just the proportion, just the probability of a Korean girl, even just doing a summer of foreign language, whatever, just doing a 1-year internship, the probability of that girl marrying a non-Korean, usually a white guy.
If it's going to be a non-Korean, it's going to be a white guy.
It's crazy how, and I've gone to a school within a U.S. military base in Korea. Pretty much most of my friends were half white, half Korean. It's just these or half black, half Korean. It's these GIs marrying. That's crazy, man. I mean, of course that happens in Japan and other bases, other U.S. military bases. But even here, you just the probability of that whole Korean woman white guy thing. I don't know. It's so strange. It's so fluid. It's so easy.
Yeah.
But then. Just kind of going back to that whole Korean, the church context. Absolutely, I might. When you first told me that story, that when you told me, I remember it this way. You said it's like, well, I'm as a Christian, I'm supposed to date another Christian. But nobody here in the church would date me, right. So I have to date a non-Christian, and then
they judge the hell out of me for doing that. So they were literally
broke my heart so bad
to a
for
life
you.
Of celibacy. That's literally what they were doing.
That broke my heart so bad for you. Oh my goodness, and I felt that, man. I felt that. The thing about kind of going back into a little bit deeper things is that for me, deconversion and all that, it's like I realize like praying is important and all, but it's just who you're thinking about. And I realized at the moment it sounded so fucked up, but I realized I am God. I've been praying to myself this whole time. And if I need to make things happen, I need to make it happen.
Yeah.
Not this
Right.
figure, not this being, you know.
Which throws all of this shit out the window of every million time you've heard God's timing, God's plan. When it's phrased in that way, it's an external thing, right? It's not you. You're waiting upon the Lord.
And you know, so we just brought this up. Church, especially in, you know, New York City, LA, big cities, church, people who go to church, especially people who are involved with church, who've been going to church for a long time, who go to church more than once a week, they all have conservative jobs. They're all in finance, they're all in healthcare, they all have very steady, well-paying jobs.
Yeah, I wouldn't say all, but the majority, yeah.
Yeah, majority. It just goes hand in hand, because when you're a devout religious person, especially something like Christianity, you're almost passive about things. You like you just said, it's all in God's timing. God, if it's in God's will, it'll make a way. You can just pray for it and all about that. I have a close friend of mine, and I would like to think that, I kind of want to think that he's still in church, because he really is committed to that. And we went to college together and all that, but he's also very entrepreneur. He's very business-like, so, you know, but he brought that up to me. I don't meet businessmen. I don't meet entrepreneurs in church, because starting a business, being an entrepreneur, having a startup is a very, very, very aggressive, action-oriented, risk-taking, and in a lot of ways profane and vulgar and downright nasty. You know, I've had moments where I'm like, go ahead, sue me. I don't give a fuck. I'm out of here. You know, and you always have to have that kind of mentality somewhere in the back of your head. It's a dog-eat-dog world. It's very competitive, but you won't meet people like that in church, because it just goes hand in hand. And you know, you're trying to marry someone who looks like you, who thinks like you, and talks like you, and trying to start a family. It really is, you know, at best a mild cult. You know,
yeah.
It's.
Oh, I'm gonna come back to that. I want to come back to the cult thing, but so let me finish the story in the timeline, right? So we got March. I turned 30, and I was really depressed at March, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I was really depressed because momentum is very key for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's like, it's not necessarily where you're at in life at a certain point, like 30 is one of those milestones, but if you feel like you don't even have momentum heading toward what you want in life, that's where I feel like depression really hits people, or it definitely hit me. So the fact that I was still single at 30 and a virgin at 30 wasn't in itself the deal breaker. The deal breaker was, if I continue living in this church environment and doing what it's just not going to happen for me. And
that was really
so yeah, right when I turned 30,
the fulcrum of how things shifted, right?
Yeah, so at 30 I sat down, I put everything on the table. And I don't just mean religion, but I meant like questioning everything, my relationship with my father, parents, family, my job, whether I should be in New York at all, friends, how I spend my time, everything, health. I put it on the table, and I really just wanted to, like, there's no question off limits.
Yeah.
Like, everything is on the table, just go at it, get to the truth of everything. So that's where I was depressed and really down and out at that time too. Yeah. So I kind of hit like rock bottom at 30. So this is how the process began. And that led to many months of, I would still go to church, but I'm just like filtering things, doing questioning deeper than I ever did before. And I was already one of those people who I would go to Bible study and question and doubt and pose things that everybody else wouldn't. So I was already that, but now I was just like, the filter's off. Yeah. Like, I might call something out for being bullshit, you know, like, so that started at 30, and then so like the Vancouver experience, and then I lost my virginity. So then like fast forward to January, and I go to LA, and I meet my old college friend, who, again, another Christian friend. We were Bible study together, and I tell him the news. He tells me the news, because this is a guy who, we were both single. He's an Egyptian guy, so we're both single in the struggle We were in like...
He's Egyptian.
Yeah, Coptic Orthodox. So we were in the accountability group.
Yeah!
Holding each other accountable, you know.
Shit, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah, so that was us in college. And now it's like years later, and I'm 30, and I go visit him in LA, and he tells me, guess what? I'm engaged, I'm getting married, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, dude, really good for you, you know. But at the same time, remember in my head, I'm already in the mindset of marriage does just signify the end of friendships, especially Christian friendships for me, right? So I'm already thinking that, right? So later in the conversation, I break my bombshell news, which is like, dude, I had sex. And the level of like, if you could just see his face, like he was the level of disappointment, disgust, sorrow, like just, he was just, it kind of floored him that it's like I failed myself, I failed God, I failed him, you know, and I felt so much judgment from him, right? And I only shared the news that I had sex with like 2 or 3 guy friends, Christian guy friends. I didn't tell everybody, like, but between him and the other Christian guy friends in my small group, who I told back in New York, they also were like, not the harshness of the judgment that he gave me, but
it was there still.
They were like, by the way, all these Christian guy friends who were judging me this way, not him, Peter, but like the other ones in New York, they had all had sex before marriage. But the thing is, when I was telling them that I did, they were like, oh man, like, and I heard the term slippery slope a lot, and like they were worried for me, and they were like, you know, but these are guys who are all engaged and married now, and it's easy for them to say, oh, they wish they could go back and not have sex and just have sex with their wife now that they're married. But like, I'm still the single guy out there who's now 30. I've gone well beyond the point of you guys of holding out for, but you guys didn't even hold out. You guys had sex in your 20s.
Yeah.
So they don't really have a right to judge me. And granted, they didn't really judge me, but I felt judged heavily by my friend in LA. And again, like we were talking about earlier, I felt like all these people in the Korean white church, whatever, like they're all condemning me to a life of celibacy and misery. And I was miserable. I would go to church every week and I couldn't sing these happy praise songs because I was miserable. And you cannot believe how many times I tried to cry out to God in prayer and all these kind of ways where I'm like, God, look, if it's not your will for me to get married and meet a girl like all my other friends are doing, then so be it. But please give me yourself. Like, give me the Holy Spirit. Jesus be the lover of my soul, right? Yeah. Like all the words in the scripture.
You're taking me back, man.
I was like, I just wanted God. I just wanted Christ. I just wanted, I like, fuck the weddings and the marriage and like, if that's not your will for me, let me be your servant, Lord. Let me be faithful and like, just you and me, God. Just you and me, right? I was like on my knees crying and praying that for like, it never came to pass. It was all just like, I'm talking to the ceiling. I'm talking to, and what I realized later on and what I would tell people now in sort of my outreach message to people on the fence about religion or not is that do not underestimate the power of the human mind to create reality. And another way I would phrase that is beliefs, right? The thing that you believe in, the truth of the thing you believe in is not even ultimately what's really important in life. It's the fact that you believe it. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
A little bit.
So to expound on that is God may very well not be real. I think there may not be a God. Certainly not the God of Abraham and Christian Bible. That's a fictitious thing. But even though it's a lie and it doesn't exist, for example, and even that I'm not saying for sure, but I don't think it exists. It's not a real thing. But let's say it doesn't exist. You can't sit here and tell me that all of these thousands of Christians do not get power and wisdom and whatever from what they believe in their God. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though they could be believing in a lie, it still gives them power and insight and wisdom as they see it, but all of that is coming from within their mind.
Yeah. It's
They're
kind of
creating this.
It's going back to what I said. I was praying to myself this whole time.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, that's why I can't win a debate in YouTube comments or whatever when people are like, well, Jesus is real to me. He comforts my soul. And I'm like, if you believe that and you feel it, there's nothing I can tell you that's going to convince you otherwise.
It's crazy how much
There's no amount of facts or evidence I can show you because you believe that, and that your mind is spinning in that way. I can't convince you out of that. And the other thing, if that's working for you, fuck it, go with it. Yeah. And I see people who go to a church and they have their friends, they have their wife, they have their husband, they have their kids, they go get the kid baptized, like they have their community. It's working for them. Yeah. And if it's working for them, of course they're going to be like, God's real, and like, oh, he prospers us, and thank God for all our blessings. Of course they're going to be like that. It's rational for them to have that response. Who am I to come up to them and be like, oh, your God's a fake, and oh, it's a real. I'm not even going to bother doing that because it's stupid. Like, I'm not going to convince them of anything. And that's not really my place to convince them of anything. What I feel like my place and my calling is more so is the things that I say and the things that I sort of preach or put out there in the world now, the message, are things I wish I heard 10 years before, like when I was 20 or 21 or 18, or, instead of me figuring out for myself at 30, 31, 32. So, like, to me, that warmed my heart that I helped influence you to sort of wake up and discover your own power in your life, Like, that's kind of why I do Confusianity, and that's kind of why I want to put that message out there, is I want to help people, Like, I hate to see people suffering and miserable, whether it's myself or a friend or family or anybody. Like, I just don't like suffering, and it's weird because a lot of Christians will say, like, well, suffering that's the path to wisdom and perseverance, and like James chapter 1, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's a big element of like the sadomasochism in Christianity, and there's a lot of this like carry your cross and self-flagellation.
But it's very, like, to me, it's all very enlightening, and to me, it's all very educational, like, kind of like you said before. Like, it's, to me, like, looking back at my time and my experiences and the people I've talked to within the church, it's just like, and the things that we go through now, and the terms, the pseudo-psychological terms we hear now, like echo chamber, cognitive dissonance, things like, or like perception is reality and all that. Like, I know that so well. Like, I totally understand that, and I totally just walk away from it. It's just like, I've been there, done that. All these like people being really, really emotional, extreme, not listening. Like I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, and it just turns out to be that they're all like conservative, right-leaning people, but they help me think. They have interesting points, and it's just like, it's just, I'm listening to these things, listening to these podcasts while I'm working and something, or on my way to work. And to me, it's like, I know all this stuff back and forth. I grew up in the church. I was thinking I was going to become a pastor. I was a lay pastor. I did children's ministry. I know all these things so well, and I know all the bullshit that human nature is about, and it's so bad. It's almost evil because it's covered in like, in outward good intentions. Like, why do you have to? They're like, oh, just like because someone's like, oh, that person's a deacon and that person is, position leadership, you have to submit to that person. I'm like, but that person's wrong. I'm just like, that can't they cut us some slack? Can't they just show us some grace? No, you have to submit. You just literally putting in things when what's convenient for you, for the rest of the group or whatever. or maybe it's just a perception, or maybe it's just reputation. You're literally using scripture, the parts of the scripture that make sense for you,
that's all religions are. It's like it's selected use of scripture.
Yeah.
Like people, it's the hilarious thing is that when you point out things, like as a non-believer, we know the Bible well, so when we point things out to Christians and people, they come back at us like, well, Satan used scripture too when he tried to tempt the Lord.
Let's talk about how many wives Solomon had. Let's not talk about how many concubines. And it's mentioned in the Bible how many of those he had.
Right. So that's the funny thing is that Christians get up on their high horse and say that we're selectively using scripture and twisting scripture for our own leftist agenda or whatever they'll say we're doing. But I'm like, but then they say some stuff and you guys are picking your own verses to support your narrative. So for me, everybody's just picking their own verses and creating their own religion in God.
So for me, I don't even see it as perception as reality. I think that almost taking a step further, deeper, and more complex, like intention is reality. Like what you tend to do is like you can make that as reality. So if you intend on certain thing, like from whether it's with the sort of the crutch of the Bible and the church, and you can really make your own reality. So for me, that's why I'm not at all confused or curious or thrown off by people who are strong about, let's say, like veganism or rights to transgender people or Trump or North Korea or anything. It's just like, for me, I've seen that in all kinds of contexts. Like, it's kind of crazy how there's a Christian faith, there's Protestants and Catholics, and with that there's also denominations, and within denomination there's their own church. You're having like freaking heated arguments within. I see like seminary students who are becoming pastors, or maybe already are pastors. They're getting doctors. They're having disagreements amongst themselves about what one verse, what word means. Yeah. And going back to what you were alluding to, like, it's just a matter of like, does it work? And I'll take that step further. Are you a good person? Or do you have a big heart? Like,
see, you know this too, but like back when I was in the church, whenever people used to say about like being a good person, I was like, that's bullshit. Nobody is a good person. Everyone is a sinner, worthy of hellfire and damnation without, the blood of Jesus, Savior, Christ. Like
I've brought up my own mental health issues to people, and they're like, "Oh, you just pray. You just pray."
Yeah. Like my German teacher, really nice guy in college. Like, I love this guy. He's a really great German teacher, really. And we became friends after class, or as we're still in touch on Facebook loosely. But so I remember one time I went back. I was like deep into Christianity then. So I went back to Chicago and I was hanging out with him, and he was like, "Pat, you're such a great person. Like, you're so nice, and you have this spirit. You're such an amazing, wonderful person." And I shut him down immediately. I was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a wonderful person. I'm a bad person. I have all kinds of sinful thoughts. I'm just like, I'm selfish. I just went on and on, and he's like, "No, what are you talking about?" He saw me and he was like, "No, you're a good person." Like, he sensed that about me, and I was like, no, I wasn't having it. And I was like, this whole idea of a good person, back when I was a Christian, this is how I responded to it. It wasn't about being a good person. Just like your life is not about your life, it's not about your happiness, it's about God. Only good person is Jesus, right? And like all of that is like such a head fuck of like,
it is.
Now I just look at, ever since I left the faith, like I just look at things, it is what it is. And you look at things for what they are. Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? Who the fuck describes that? Like, I'm a mix of both. Whatever, everybody is, Like,
and the thing that
so what? Nobody's perfect. Like,
and the thing that people miss out is that when they say that, when that guy was saying that to you, that guy is saying like, "Hey, I like you. You're a friend, and I totally admire how you carry yourself. Like, you're a good dude." That's what he was trying to say.
Right.
But it's just our knee-jerk Christian reaction is like, nobody's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all such bullshit, and it's like, it's also focusing on the negative, which is a big part of Christianity. You know? Like, how many Tim Keller sermons or sermons by anybody, where it's like, for 30 minutes, they talk about how shitty you are, and today we're going to talk about the sin of XYZ. And then in the last 2 minutes of the sermon, it's like, but thanks be to God, Jesus loves you so much, he died for your sins. Like, now go in peace and let's all sing the doxology.
So
fuck out of here.
You just made me realize like how I would hate on preachers and churches that were like, oh, they preach health and wealth. Like, that's all they preach about. They don't think about the cross. They don't think about suffering. They don't think about.
You mean like the Joel Osteen?
It's just like this fucking like going like it's just like this is kind of before Joel Osteen came to power. But it's just like
came to power.
Yeah. But then it's funny now because once and Susie hated this. Like, I would love listening to Joel Osteen because I understood that guy is a total scam, but it's a fun scam to watch. It's like the best. Just now that I left the faith, and
it's entertaining to watch, my friend.
It's like
just the way he talks. You almost think he actually believes it.
Donald Trump version of The Apprentice put into. It's not even reality TV. It's actually reality. This exists, and the people there, they freak. I'm just like, oh god, this is so fun. And she hated me because she's like, well, I don't want to get away from any kind of Christianity stuff. For me, it's like, I see through this now. I see the Matrix now. It's so funny, man. Yeah. Any concluding remarks about Confusianity, Deconversion?
Well, I feel like I took it through the full scope, because what ended up being is, like, in my 30s, I'm certainly not where I'm at yet, you know, in terms of, like, ideally I would like to have some income, like a stream of income coming in, and I'm doing something creatively that I love to do. And I've met some girl who's like a life partner, dream girl kind of thing, that we just totally get each other and love each other. And, you know, whether we get married and have kids or not, that's a whole other thing. But, like, just meeting that person, and I'm just doing what I want to do creatively, that is like my ideal life. So I don't have either of those yet, but the reason why I'm happier about my life right now is at least I'm on the path toward those things, as opposed to, like I said, at 30, I was not even on the path to that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so my 30s was basically figuring all this shit out, walking away from the church, which is a whole process in and of itself. Like, just to leave your social network behind, to leave your community behind. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. But I've also been doing that my whole life in the military, like I said. Mm-hmm. So growing up, moving around all the time, like, I always had to restart. So I'm just like, well, this is just a massive reboot, you know. But it's cool because now I'm meeting people in ex-Christian groups. I'm meeting more creative, artsy, entrepreneurial people who are really more my tribe anyways. You know? People who are not racist, people who are, you know, accepting of different, you know. So it's great. Like, you know, I had to restart, but it's kind of a necessary reboot, you know. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that was my deconversion process. And I just want to encourage people that, you know, life is short. And it's good to question your life and your happiness and your motives, your motivations. Like, who am I? Where am I at in life, and where am I going? Right? And if you don't like the answers to those questions, it's up to you. I do want to add this one comment. So, like, I had so much bitterness in my heart as I was leaving the church while I was still in church. I would go to church and I'd look around at these Koreans and these white couples, and I'm just like, I had so much bitterness, right? And then what I realized in the year or two of leaving the church, I realized, and this is what allowed me to let go of that bitterness and that hate, even towards Christianity itself in a way, and these people, is that it's on me.
Oh, shit.
It was my choice to go to church and surround myself with these racist, bigot people who they want to smile in my face and nobody actually wants to be with me, like on a deeper level. But it was my choice to continue to subject myself to that. And once I woke up to that fact, and it was a choice, and I started to choose this other path, then I was like owning my own decision and path in life, right? But that's the thing I will say and encourage to anybody, whether it's leaving religion or not, whether it's anything in your life, leaving a relationship or not, is that unless you're shackled and a slave in a dungeon or something, like we have a choice. You know, people have far more options than they give themselves credit for. You can always get a divorce, you can always leave that abusive relationship, you can always walk away from the church. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. You can leave your job, your safe, secure job, and go try this other entrepreneurial path. It might be failure or whatever, but it's a choice, it's an option. So once I kind of absorbed that, it allowed me to let go of some of that anger and hostility toward the Koreans and Christians and all Americans, all white. Because now I'm just like, that's good for them. They have their thing. But I'm no longer going to allow them to tell me what I can and cannot do with my own life. Like, I'm going to go date non-Christians and have sex and drink alcohol and cuss and travel and enjoy my life, right? But it was my decision all along to allow them to have the power over me. As soon as I got up and walked away, so that is a huge takeaway. Is it was my fault in a way, it's like it was my. But Christianity is like, it's no joke. The fact that I was in it for 31 years, and I didn't walk away. It took 31 years to really just walk away. And now I look back and I'm like, how could I have stayed in that environment for so long? But it's because Christianity is that alluring.
But it's also
that
it's just like what I've been saying. It's everything. I mean, it's a lot of things that we need. As to just take a look into human evolution, like that tribe and the same, we believe in the same things, and we meet on a regular basis, and
it deals with your greatest fears about death and afterlife. It gives you that comfort.
It's us against them, and don't be one of them. And, you having sex before marriage, you're one of them, and it's all the being hypocritical. It's just like. It's all these things wrapped into one. That's what religion is. That's what a lot of things.
That framework.
It is. And it's funny that you say that you found peace when you left because you took responsibility. Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah.
I had this for me, it's like a few months ago, just coming into this year, just. The depression I was going through was pretty bad, and my kind of depression is just like I just check out. I do the bare minimum with work, with everything else, and I'm just not really just taking responsibility. And there was a bad fallout with one of my clients. They're one of my biggest clients at the time. I was doing a lot of work for them, and it just didn't turn out well. I didn't carry myself in a proper professional manner, in a responsible manner. So, the relationship ended. There was some work I delivered very late, but I didn't get paid for it. I got, I sent them a bill for like $5,000. They're like, go fuck yourself. We're not paying this. But I was like, I knew immediately. I was so distraught. I was so bitter. I was so thinking of, going into that office with the AK and just ripping them apart. It was just very, very, very dark and very, very angry. But I received peace because I was like, no, that was on me. That was totally me. I'm responsible for that. I don't hate them. I don't hate the owners there, but I hate that part of me because I took responsibility. I failed. I chose to not take proper measurements to take care of myself. And once and whenever I think about them and I think about anybody who's pissed me off, take responsibility. You gotta take that failed friendship, that my failed marriage and all that. No, I take responsibility. And it's so strange how once you take that harder path, that it's actually better for you. Mm-hmm. You come out for the better.
Yeah, it's just being fully honest about it, And I think most people are only, even like the honest people in life, are only maybe 70-80% honest.
At best.
Yeah, like they don't go that extra 20%. Like when I hit rock bottom at 30, that's where it's like, okay, it's time to be 100% honest about everything.
Yeah.
But most people,
it's so hard, man.
They don't operate there.
So hard, man.
Sorry for the abrupt ending there, but thus concludeth the first episode of the Confusianity podcast. Hope you enjoyed hearing our raw, unfiltered stories of deconversion. As you may have gathered, a deconversion experience is not necessarily a purely theological matter. Religion, just as anything in life, is something to be evaluated on a personal basis, whether it's working for you or against you. Anyway, stick around. We'll be back in a couple weeks for episode 2, where I interview Damien. No, not the son of Satan, just a good friend of mine. We'll be doing a deep dive into free will, herd mentality, social media, politics, consciousness, and the meaning of life, or lack thereof. In case you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Confusianity podcast on your platform of choice, currently available on YouTube at youtube.com/Confusianity, and pretty much all the other major podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. For a list of all available platforms, visit anchor.fm/Confusianity. Until next time, my friends.